were just kind of talking about the week of July 1st. So you had testified that you sent a photo of your daughter on the 4th?
Yes.
And you did not hear back from your dad?
I did not.
Okay. Did you hear back from your mom?
I think my sister was the first one to respond, and then my mom didn't respond until around 8 o'clock at night.
On the 4th?
On the 4th.
So other than that, nothing unusual on the 4th was happening? You're
not to my knowledge. Everything
issues?
was normal.
I do actually want to back up a little bit before we get into the 5th. For April of that year, did you know that your dad had been in the hospital?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get the chance to visit him while he was in the hospital?
No. So I found out that he was in the hospital, and I wanted to come, and he was actually the one that said, "No, don't come here. It's fine." But yes, I knew he was in the hospital.
Okay. But was that the only conversation that you guys ever really had about it?
No, I mean, I mostly spoke with my mom, and I also spoke with my brother Chris. I didn't talk to my dad again or like on the phone until I think the day he was leaving. But I mean, I think the reason why I was so upset was because when I would talk to my mom, she made it sound like it was really, really bad. Like he was in really bad shape. I was expecting in my mind I was thinking it was really bad. Like he was going to the hospital. And it wasn't until I heard from my brother Chris that he's like, "No, Daddy said don't worry about coming up here. Please don't worry about him." And he's just sitting up in the bed and talking and watching TV. It's not as bad. That put me at ease, kind of hearing his version of the situation.
Okay.
Yep.
So you didn't end up visiting him?
No.
Because you learned it really wasn't that bad.
Right. And then I did ultimately talk to my dad, and he sounded normal. He sounded like himself, and he said, "I'm going home. No reason to worry." My dad was always very much so to put us at ease. Everything is fine. Please do not worry. I'm going home. Everything's good.
Okay. Now I want to talk about the morning of July 5th. What did you and your family do that morning?
So I worked on July the 5th. The office was open, so I was driving. I drove into work that morning. I dropped Olivia off at daycare, and I went into work that day, as did my husband.
And eventually, did you get a call from any of your family members looking for your dad?
Yes.
Who called first?
So my brother Chris called me first when he was driving up there, and he said, "So I just talked to Amanda, and apparently they can't find Daddy anywhere." And I think I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean they can't find him?" He's like, "They're apparently looking everywhere and they cannot find him." He said, "I'm on my way up there right now to see what's going on."
Okay. And at that point, what was going on in your head?
Well, honestly, that morning driving in, I thought about that text message that I sent with Olivia's picture, and I thought back to that moment. Literally in the car on my drive in, I was like, "That's weird. He didn't respond to that message. He always responds to pictures of Olivia, and he never responded." And so that's really weird. And so that made me pause. But then after Chris called me, it just made me think about it made me worry even more when he called and said that, because of the fact that my dad hadn't, I had realized that morning that he hadn't responded to my text message, and that really made me worry.
Who was the next person you heard from?
I did talk to Chris a few times. He would kind of keep me up to date. The other person I spoke to was my mom. She called me.
Around what time was this? Do you remember?
It was before lunchtime. Tennessee's Central, so we're an hour behind. It was maybe 10 or 11-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 11, 12 here, our time.
Yes.
And what did your mom say to you when she called?
She said, "Well, your daddy's missing." And I said, "What do you mean he's missing?" And she said, "Well, we're out here looking for him, and we can't find him anywhere." And I said, "Well, go look. Are his clothes still there? Is his CPAP machine still there? Did he leave? And did he just leave? And I said, go look for that stuff. Look for his keys. Look for his phone. Look for his wallet. Like, go look for that stuff. And she just kind of was like, okay, and got off the phone with me.
Okay.
She did call me back, however, and she asked me if I was on any of his bank accounts. And I said, no, why would I be on any of his bank accounts? She's like, well, I just thought that maybe you could log into the accounts and see if there's been any activity. And I said, no, I don't have access to that. And we hung up the phone.
Okay. Was that shortly after the first phone call that you had with her?
Yeah, I mean, she called me, like literally called me right back and asked me that question.
And then who did you hear from next?
I think it was Chris. I mean, he would keep calling just to like let me know. And I think I even said to him, like, call local hospitals, call, maybe like he went to the ER or something. But I know that when I like first got word that he was missing, I called my dad, and it went to voicemail. And I don't know if I texted him, but I did send him an email to his personal email and his work email saying, like, we're trying to find you. Where are you? Please call me back. Like, just, it was very brief, something to just be like, hey, if you get this, call me. Mm-hmm. And then the next call I got was from Chris. And he said he's gone. I said, what do you mean he's gone? What are you talking about? And he said, Emily, he's gone. I was like, where did he go? He said, no, he's gone. He is gone. He's like, we think he's in the burn pile. And that's just kind of when it went, I just lost it. You know, I just said, I'm coming. I'm on my way. And then I think I talked to my sister Amanda, and she was very upset. And I just said, I'm on my way. I'll be there as soon as I can. And so I left the office. I called my boss immediately, and I packed up. I left. I went and got Olivia, and I called my husband, and he met me at home, and we packed up as quickly as we could, and we drove to Atlanta.
I want to talk about those phone calls briefly. How did Chris sound on the phone with you?
Frantic. Like, it first started like what is going on? Like, you know, when he said, I'm going to go up here and see what's going on. Like, it was almost like, I need to figure out what's going on. But like, when he got there and started looking around and like, they couldn't find him, like, he was frantic. And when he called me about them after they had found him, essentially, it was just devastation in his voice.
And what about your sister Amanda? How did she sound?
She was crying. I mean, we were all extremely devastated. My mom called me when we were driving to Atlanta, and we just cried. We cried. I think the only words that I got at was, I'm on my way. And she just said, okay.
And so when you arrived to the house, do you remember what time it was? To the farm, I should say?
Yeah, it was early evening. The sun was setting, but it was early evening when we finally got there.
When you arrived, what was the feeling, the vibe of the scene when you got there?
It was very quiet. It was very, like, eerily quiet. Everyone was just standing around. No one was talking. And I was, when I got out of the car, I got Olivia out, and I just immediately handed her, I think it was to Amanda or my mom, and we were all crying. Just tears.
Was law enforcement on scene at that point?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember speaking with any law enforcement on scene?
I did eventually speak with Detective Hayes, yes.
How long was that conversation?
I mean, it was a pretty good amount of time, maybe 30 minutes or so. I can't really remember exactly how long it was. It was a good length.
And while you were on scene, did you hear Scott mention anything about a gun?
No, he was just like, he's like, there's something going on here. Like he was like his senses were up. Like he's like, there's something going on. Like this isn't normal. I definitely, like driving down, in my mind was thinking that some terrible accident had happened. Like he had caught on fire, doing something with the burn pile, and he had caught himself. Like I thought he had like had a terrible accident. And then by the time I got there, it just quickly started to sink in the seriousness of what happened, and like just reading the room essentially. I think a lot of people, their suspicion of what actually happened was starting to grow.
Did Scott mention anything about blood to you?
No.
When did you find out that your father had been shot?
Well, it wasn't like confirmation, but the first time I ever heard of him possibly being shot was Friday. So I guess that was the 6th. My brother Chris called me very, very early in the morning and said, Detective Hayes called him and said that they had found a bullet in my dad's rib. And I said, like, what? Like, what? Like, it was surprising to hear that. And they were like, yeah. And, he's asking, me about it. He's asking where I was. And that's also the time he filled me in. Like, I didn't know that my mom and Scott were being questioned at the precinct. Like, I had no idea that was happening. And, like, Chris told me, yeah, like, they're apparently still there. And honestly, my first reaction when I found out that my mom was still being questioned, I said, do we need to get her a lawyer? That was my first reaction. I said, I don't know what's going on and I don't know what happened to him, but I don't want her to get in trouble for something she didn't do, so maybe we should get her an attorney. Okay. That's kind of what we discussed at that point.
Okay. So did that happen? What did you guys do next?
We did. I think Amanda called maybe somebody at my dad's law firm with like recommendations on what to do, and she got a name and she called, and we did later that day end up going to an attorney's office. Yes.
On the 6th.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did the whole family meet with the attorneys?
Yes, it was me and my husband and Olivia were the first to get to the office, and then Chris and Scott followed, and then Amanda, we were able to get her out of the room with questioning, and Amanda brought her down to the office.
Brought who?
My mom, down to the office.
Were your brothers there as well?
They were, yes. And Chad Bruce was there too.
Chad Bruce.
Chad Bruce.
And who's Chad Bruce?
Amanda's now husband, then boyfriend.
After meeting with the attorneys, did things change among the 5 of you, your siblings and your mom?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I think something was brewing, I should say. That experience over that weekend, I know for me personally, definitely had me starting to lean towards somebody did this to him. And it was not, I mean, I think we all had our own perceptions of what happened, and we were taking it all in differently. But I know for me, I was kind of naive in the moment. But just the interactions over the weekend, how people were talking to each other. Like by the end of the weekend on my way home, I mean, I told my husband what I thought actually had happened. So
You mentioned that you started realizing that someone did this to your father, but you had heard about a bullet.
mm-hmm.
So were people not sure that
Yeah,
had actually happened?
We basically had the attorney saying they could just be lying to you. It's not like they're not.
It's not the truth of the matter asserted, Judge. It just goes to the feelings of the parties.
Repeat the question.
My question?
Yeah.
What made her essentially say, we thought this could possibly somebody did this to him? Why was there hesitation when there was a bullet found in his body? It's to explain why they thought the way
Go
they
ahead.
did. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Repeat your question.
Sure. When law enforcement informed Chris that there was a bullet in his body, and you had mentioned that you were coming to the realization that someone may have done this to your dad, but knowing that there was a bullet in him, why did people still think that? Why did you think that maybe it was not a bullet?
Well, the attorney, I heard the attorney say, like, they could just, I mean,
Don't go into what the attorney told you, just what your response was.
Well, Judge, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It's to explain why she thought that maybe he wasn't shot.
I don't know that she needs to explain why she thought maybe he wasn't shot. She can just say that she wasn't sure because she didn't know.
But I'm trying to get out why she didn't know. Not the truth of the matter asserted,
She
Judge.
didn't know because she hadn't looked in the.
It just goes to the feelings of all the parties afterwards.
You can talk about that. So you can go into all that without going to what the lawyer specifically said to her.
Okay. So, at any point, did you actually realize, and was it confirmed, that your father had been shot?
yes,
Okay.
I did receive confirmation later that my dad had been shot, and that was pretty much the sticking point for me.
Okay, so prior to that, it was still essentially up in the air with the family that
Right.
that was confirmed.
Like, this possibly could have happened.
Okay. You mentioned that was a sticking point for you. What does that mean?
I guess I just needed to hear that that's actually what happened. Like, I just needed to hear that from, like, a professional, so a trusting source, that's what had happened. And when I heard that, I thought, I mean, it just confirmed my beliefs.
What was the relationship like between you and your mom after this? Before you found out about the confirmation of the bullet?
I mean, it was normal. I was still talking to her. I mean, it kind of blurs together, but I mean, I know that there was a lot of her. I mean, we were all like just trying, like, all hands on deck, just to help with getting information. Like, we had no idea if my dad had a will. We didn't know really anything. We were completely hit by this out of the blue. So we were really just trying to figure out what to do, just to kind of take care of things and get access to things. And I mean, I was talking to her during that time. I mean, she's still my mom, so I mean, like, I didn't like act any differently with her.
Okay. And at some point, did that change?
Yeah, I mean, she became more hostile. She was more aggressive with us. She was demanding money. Like, she would like bring up instances where my dad had lent us money or something, and she would be like, "It's time to pay me back. Like, I need you to pay me back now." And I'm just like, well, you know, I had a payment plan with him. Like, I wasn't just going to give him like a lump sum. And, you know, she was getting pretty aggressive with that. yeah, I guess that's kind of the best way to describe her behavior.